Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm in Rahway, New Jersey. I'm actually working on the house that I used to live in before I met my lovely wife and moved down to Point Pleasant. Doing a service here on Jackson Avenue in Rahway. There was a time early in my career where we didn't have access to the SDS Max wireless drills, or cordless drills I should say. So we would drive those ground rods using a sledgehammer. So I am very grateful for Milwaukee Tools, the M18 drills here, the hammer drills, the SDS Max and the SDS Plus, which you see here, drilling 1/4-inch holes for plastic wall anchors. This house was built with cinder blocks, and so the cinder itself is kind of not as strong as poured concrete, so I'm using plastic anchors, which I normally use, but you could use Tapcons, but I would not suggest using Tapcon screws when working with cinder block. It's just too soft. And so the other thing you could do here, instead of drilling out all these holes and using straps, you could also dig a trench to bury the grounding electrical conductors to both of the ground rods. But here I chose to do it this way because the ground was pretty nice. I didn't want to disrupt it. And then also, you don't see it there, but right beneath where I'm working is a pipe for the, if you see the leader on the side of the picture, the frame right there for the water, the runoff water goes into a pipe. It's actually buried underneath the ground right there. So I didn't want to disrupt that. And like most of my videos, the grounding electrodes here, the grounding system, I was here a couple days before I did the work, getting that all in place. So on the day that the power was down, there was limited time with this customer not having power. That's pretty ordinary for most of my jobs now to do the grounding ahead of time. It just seems to work out better. And then I come back the second day and do the full upgrade. And usually by the end of that day, I don't have time to label all of the circuits. So I come back a third day, usually to do additional work as well, and to be there to meet the inspector, to make sure if he has any issues with anything, which they normally do not, that I'm able to take care of it then and not postpone getting that final approval and, of course, getting that final check. Number 6, copper ground wire for all your ground rods. You never have to go higher or a larger wire than that. And you never use aluminum in the ground. As you can see, there's the water main coming from the street. So we need to jump it out from the utility side across the meter to the customer side, which is right over here. So that's what we're going to do next. Here I'm going over the garage door, making sure that I put the conductor in a position where it won't get damaged when the door opens and closes. And same thing over here. I'm using a piece of 3/4-inch PVC to protect the conductor so it doesn't get nicked or damaged or, God forbid, broken, leaving this electrical system vulnerable. When I strip back this conductor here, I cut around the circumference of the diameter of the conductor, and then I very carefully use my utility knife to score the insulation so I could peel it back in a nice workmanlike manner. It takes a little bit of practice getting used to, but you have to strip it back in order to fit it through the termination on the water ground clamps. Number 2 aluminum, it'll fit on these clamps, but it's a tight fit, and so strategically you have to think about that. Here is the grounding electrode conductor, the number 2 aluminum attached to the utility side of the in-ground water pipe grounding electrode, and this is the customer side. Now this is important to jump from both sides in case that meter is removed. The integrity of the grounding electrode is still in place. And obviously this is my grounding electrode conductor that's going to go back to my main breaker disconnect. Actually, it's going to tap into both of those main disconnects as required by the code. But this is how the wire was run. And when I say wire, what I really mean as an electrician is a conductor. So Federal Pacific, as we know, fire hazard. So we're going to have to identify most of these circuits here. I see a double pole 30 and mostly single poles from there. Double pole 20 up at the top. Not exactly sure what that's doing, but we'll soon find out. But the one thing we're definitely going to do today is tag all these wires so we know which one's the first floor, which one's the second floor. One of the major problems with Federal Pacific Electric was the size of this enclosure and the bending radius of the conductors. And so with the new panels, they're 14.5 inches wide, and that takes care of that bending radius of the larger conductors. So I'm tagging each of the first floor cables with red tape, so when I take them out of the panel, I'll know they go back into the first floor panel. It was a beautiful day to work, and so obviously after I shed the load, like all my other 200 amp service videos, I'm going up on the extension ladder here to disconnect from the utility. And then I will remove this riser, which only had a couple of straps, and it came down pretty easily, as you can see. It's important when working on a two-family service to identify the first floor meter and the second floor meter so they go back in the right place when you're done. See all those clips in there? All these little plastic clips, they go over the meter, so they could put the meter back in, but it won't allow you to have electrical power because you didn't pay your bill on time, or there's no tenant there. But those are the clips they use to disconnect your power. Even though the meter's in, it's not working, it's because those clips are in. Maybe you wouldn't be surprised at how many times when I do a service upgrade I see those clips. It's a little bit embarrassing, but you don't know the whole story, so I'm not judging anybody, especially my customers. Federal Pacific is best known for a line of circuit breaker equipment called stab lock. That's what these circuit breakers and panel is here. These circuit breakers and electrical panels were used extensively in residential and commercial construction from about 1951. The product design was flawed and had a high failure rate, which was initially discovered by Reliance Electric engineers when Reliance purchased Federal Pacific Electric Company. In 1986, Reliance Federal Pacific exits the circuit breaker business. It sells Federal's Newark plant and changes the Federal name to Challenger Electric. Challenger moves the plants from Newark to Linden, resells the plant to Westinghouse, and sells the remainder of the circuit breaker company to American Circuit Breaker Corporation. If you have a home built between 1950 and 1990, you may have Federal Pacific Electric panel circuit breakers in your home. You should contact a licensed electrician and have it upgraded as soon as possible. These are definitely a fire hazard, and they should be upgraded by a licensed electrician. It's kind of funny. I just thought I'd show it to you. We're not supposed to double tap those terminals, but look at that one right there. Crazy. It's going to be easy for me to take these circuits out, but that's just ridiculous. The reason why I say it's ridiculous is because the neutral conductor is supposed to be on its own terminal. Now, years ago, it was accepted to double tap a neutral conductor on a neutral bar or a ground bar at a main breaker. Nowadays, that is no longer permitted. And the reason why it's no longer permitted is because a neutral is a current carrying conductor. And if it's not properly terminated on a terminal, it's not going to be able to return the proper neutral current back to the source as it is required to do and how the electrical circuit works. On a 120 volt circuit, the same amount of current is flowing on the hot conductor as it is on the neutral conductor. And so if it's not properly terminated or if it's double tapped, heat could build up from an arcing sensation, causing that circuit to fail and causing an unwanted fire hazard. It's now required by the code that all neutral terminals be terminated on their own terminal without any other conductors. The old timers really like using those flathead screws for everything they did. Maybe that's all that was available, but I see them all over the place. And I think this house was built maybe in the 1950s or the early 1960s. But they really like using those flatheads. So I keep a flathead attachment for my cordless drill, and I use it to loosen up all the terminals in the panels and then take the panels screws out of there to remove the panel. So I'm just using one of the cables to wrap up the other cables and just push them out of my way so I can do some work here. My next job is I'm going to go outside and I'm going to get the feeders coming out of the main disconnects and inside the house here so I can come back later this afternoon and attach the panels to them. So here I'm just using some AZEK to cover up where the old meters were. And I don't know if I could do this again. Maybe I would have used a larger piece, but I'm just patching it up basically. And I have an obstacle there to my left is a piece of 1/2 inch EMT. And so I only have 23.5 inches of space between where that leader is for the gutter and where that conduit is. So I need to build it out to mount this 2-gang 200 amp meter enclosure. So here I'm just prepping the... well, actually, I prepped some of the stuff at home before I brought it up to the job, but now I'm just trying to get everything in place and get some measurements and figure out how this is going to go. And what winds up happening is the meter is only supposed to be 6 feet 6 inches from the ground, and it's actually at about 6 feet 8 inches, 10 inches, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it is a little bit high, but this is the only place where I could go where I could bring my feeders through the rim joist of the house, which is at the bottom of that blue vinyl siding, rather than go through the foundation again and making holes bigger. Then I would have had to have used some PVC to go through the damp location. So I chose to do the service entrance cable, the riser I should say. So it's got 2 hots, a neutral and a ground as required. So right here, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to do all this. And so you want to have that meter in place where it's going to go before you set up the disconnects. And also, it's a 200 amp meter, and so it's a 200 amp service. But the first floor panel is going to be 200 amps, and that's for the first floor and the ground level. And the second floor apartment where I used to live is only 100 amps. Now would be a great time, if you haven't already, to like this video and hit that subscribe button. And if you like this content and you enjoy learning more about the electrical trade, then hit that subscribe button as well. And I thank you sincerely. It took me a little while to bend that 1¼ inch PVC to fit between the meter and the top of the disconnect, and if I could do it all over again, I probably would have just make my own KO in the bottom of the meter and then come into the top of the disconnect. But what is done, and it didn't occur to me at that time while I was doing the work. So there's a offset between the meter and the 100 amp main disconnect, and once that's up, now I can start concentrating on my service riser. And as you can see, the sunlight is not beating down on the side of the house for most of the day, only towards the second half of the day. And so I didn't feel it was necessary to put a 2-inch expansion coupling on this particular riser like I did the other one. So what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to get the middle of the two pieces of PVC so that my coupling is actually in the middle of the run. It's just a small detail that looks nicer later on. It's really not that big of a deal. I really could have just cut a small piece on the top of the 10-foot piece of PVC that you see sitting there now and glued that together, but I decided to do a little bit extra and go ahead and try to get that coupling right in the middle of the run. Another important part of this job here is that the service head has to be above where the hook is. And if you can see all the way up there, and you'll see a close-up here pretty soon, the hook holding the service drop from the utilities really close to the top, right underneath that soffit. So the service head, or the weather head I should say, should be above where that hook is, and I do get it there, but it's all the way up at the top. So I get to cut the piece of PVC exactly how I like it. I'm just going to do a little test fit here, go back down and get the glue, go back up, glue it on, get the service head on, and then we're ready to start doing our 4-aught aluminum up this riser and out of the weather head. It was around this time that I was asked to, how much longer until the power comes on? Because my customer was concerned about the freezer of the cake. So it was decided that I was going to complete the first floor panel first and get that energized before we start working on the second floor panel. The tenants on the second floor, they were away on vacation when I did this, so they were not interrupted. They weren't even home. So when they came back, they have to adjust all of their TVs and the timers and clocks in the house. But that's about it. And so I went to work on getting the first floor panel on first, which is the 200 amp that you see me working on here. I want to say there was about maybe 12 circuits here, plus the space for the whole house surge protection, which is required for each of these panels here. Even in New Jersey, even in the National Electric Code, even if you're just replacing a panel, not the whole service upgrade, the surge protection is required. It's the disconnect that might not be required. You have to check with your particular state and town whether or not it's required. But when we change a panel only, we have to upgrade the grounding, put the surge protection in, but the service disconnect is not required when you're changing out just the panel. So I'm sure there'll be guys changing out the panel, then coming back 6 months later and changing out the outside so they don't have to put the disconnect in. But that's foolish if you ask me. You're really putting your license at risk to try to play the game like that. Because if somebody catches up to you, you can get a fine. I mean, why would you do that? Why don't you just do the right thing and let's get these disconnects in place so that the first responders, namely our firemen, are able to disconnect the power so they can start spraying the hoses and putting the fire out as soon as possible. I'm allowed to use tie wraps to do this, but I just use a scrap piece of this wire and I wrap it around all these conductors just to keep it nice and clean. So it looks like I'm finally done with all the circuit breakers in place and all my neutrals and grounds are terminated. And I'm going to go out on the ladder and reconnect to the service so that we can energize this first floor panel and restore power to all the freezers and refrigerators we have going on. And you're asking, well, how can you do that without the other service being affected? Well, what ends up happening in this meter is the power was going to come down from the utility down the riser into the top of the meter pan. And so each line side of each meter will be live, but until you actually put the meter in place, you don't bridge the gap. I shouldn't say the gap. You don't bridge the line to the load until that meter is in. So once I put the meter in for the first floor panel, the first floor panel is energized. If I don't put in the meter for the second floor panel, then that panel is not energized, and that's exactly what I did here. If you like this video, please do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can see more great content like this. And if you want to be an electrician, look in the description of this video. I have a lot of links there to the NJIEC, which is the New Jersey Independent Electrical Contractors Association. We are a political action committee that has opened up apprentice school for training to become an electrician, to become a journeyman. In New Jersey, you have to complete an approved, Department of Labor approved apprenticeship program, which requires 576 classroom hours and 8,000 on-the-job training hours, approved by the Department of Labor in order to become a journeyman in the state of New Jersey. So there's really 3 levels in New Jersey. You're a helper, which means you're just starting out and you're doing the work that nobody really else wants to do, but you're getting your foot in the door. Then you can become an apprentice, and then once you're done being an apprentice and you complete the classroom hours and the on-the-job training, you become a journeyman. And once you have that journeyman certificate, I believe the law says 1 year after that time, you're allowed or permitted to sit in for the licensing exam to get your electrical license, which is where I'm at in this industry. Once you get your electrical license, that means you know what you're doing. And the state gives you a license and you can apply for a business permit and go into business for yourself. So links in the description below if you are interested. Make sure you email our education director, Christine, and get registered to come to school in the fall next year. I hope to meet you one day in the classroom. So once we're tied in to the utility, before I do anything, I always make sure I have my proper voltage, and I do. So I have 120 volts on each leg of this single-phase service to ground, and 240 volts between each leg of the single-phase service. So 240 volt line service. And so once I put the meter in here, I connect the line side to the load side, which goes to the panel. And then we're going to go inside and turn the breakers on and restore power, and everybody will be happy again. All right, so the first floor is on, and the ground level here where I'm working at. The lady makes cakes. My old landlord makes cakes, and she's worried about them being frozen. I warned her in advance to make sure that you would take care of that, but she was getting a little nervous. So now the power's back on, so it's going to get better up there. That makes me feel good, but I still got to tie in the second floor panel, and then I'm going to come back on Monday and finish that conduit that's on the outside that came in to the back of the panel. That's just going to take a little while. I got to come through the top, and we'll feed a circuit. It shouldn't be that big of a deal though. All right, so it was a very, very long day today doing this service. Obviously, there's a 200 amp panel and a 100 amp panel, but there's only 24 circuits here. So maybe I underestimated this work a little bit, but here's the final product. There's a few things we're gonna change when we come back. This circuit right here is on the second floor panel, but it's on the first floor. It's for the laundry room on the first floor. So we're gonna relocate this one breaker from the second floor panel to the first floor panel. That's done right. Obviously, this receptacle over here, I wanted to update this. So obviously with the hole going into the receptacle like that, the unused opening, that's a code violation. So we got it temporarily wired inside the panel, so at least it's on. The woman that owns a house here makes cakes for a living, so she's got this refrigerator, this freezer, and another freezer in the back, and more refrigeration equipment on the first floor. So we didn't want to leave her without the refrigeration, so that's why we have those cords plugged in right there. We're gonna fix that, get that all straightened out. We removed all that old phone wire. It's over here. We'll probably cut that out on Monday when I come back. Obviously these cables came in from outside like that. Worked out pretty well. Took me a lot longer than I thought it would here today. It's a Saturday, it's not so bad. It's not like I got to go to school tonight or something like that. So got a little bit of a mess here to clean up. We're almost done. Let me take you outside and show you the end result out there. Okay, so here we have obviously our 200 amp disconnect, service rated, meters in, a little high. Hope that's not a big deal. We'll see. They're all digital now, so hopefully that's not a big deal, because that'd be a pain in the ass to have to move it now. And then we have our 100 amp disconnect. We have our grounding electrodes. On Monday we'll get a strap on here, and we'll also fill these in with the hydraulic concrete as well. Just ran out of time tonight. These holes here, see that? Obviously this circuit goes up to the second floor, so I need to do something with that. Probably going to put this in a box and then come back in probably over here, maybe with some seal tight or something like that. But the grounding electrode system, we got the 2 ground rods. They come up, and one goes into this equipotential bonding grid right here. Not the equipotential bonding grid, but the grounding electrode bridge that's required. That comes here and terminates inside of our main breaker panel here, just like that. There's a lot going on in there. We have the number 2 ground that goes to the panel on the inside, and then we have the number 2 ground that goes up to the meter. Okay, the neutral, I should say. And then we have that black wire up on the top. That's our grounding electrical conductor that goes back to the water main, which we showed earlier in the video. So what we need to do is we need to run a jumper from this electrode side, which is this number 6, over to this side, and attach that to our grounded conductor for this service. That's what the code says to do in Article 250, Tax 64. So I'm going to put the covers on these plates. I'm going to put the plates on these enclosures, and it's real late at night. I think it's about 7 o'clock at night, and I am ready to go have some dinner and watch the Yankees, and maybe even crack a couple cold ones. So if you like this video, do me a favor, hit like, and we'll finish this up Monday. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.